What's up, guys? It's your boy Marksman Crusader, and we've got.
Armed Atlas.
And Cash.
Welcome to Arcade Island, y'all. Today's topic is about stealth games. Are they fading away and becoming a mystery?
Dun, dun, dun.
So, to kind of just get things off, I've noticed a lot when it comes to stealth games that you're not really in that dedicated game space, you know? Like, there are stealth segments to games, but not actual just full-on stealth games as a genre.
Like the old Splinter Cell.
Old Splinter Cell, Metal Gear Solid, stuff like that. Like, you'll see a segment where it's like, hey, you can have the option to sneak around, but not necessarily that the game itself is just about sneaking around. So let's get into it.
Okay. Well, obviously, I love a good stealth game. Let's say obviously. No one knows that about me. I love a good stealth game. I grew up playing after the Xbox 360 was already out. Somebody lent us an Xbox, like original Xbox. I think one of your friends did, and it came with. I think one of the Madden games. That was my first Madden experience.
Yeah,
and
Halo 2 was on there as well, and I believe it was Splinter Cell Chaos Theory.
I can't remember exactly which one it was, but
sure.
it was really good.
Yeah.
I was surprised, and I was really kind of surprised how well that game looked and ran from a Gen 1 Xbox versus 360 and whatnot.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so what are you thinking? Like, what are some, I guess, titles that you reminisce on?
I gotta say, titles that I reminisce on is like the classic Metal Gear Solid. I mean, that's one of the top titles that it was a simple stealth game where it's like, I'm going in and I'm not going in guns blazing. I have to sneak around and I have to actually, not get caught.
It was not a combat game, except for those
game.
two combat segments.
Yeah. If anything, combat was more of the minor aspect of the game, but the majority of the game was stealth, right? Another game that I love to this day is Dishonored.
Dishonored's a good one.
Dishonored's a good one. The Corvo Attano is just his name, right? He goes around, he's got to sneak around, and there's actually kind of like a chart that they have at every end of the mission, right? Where it shows you, hey, were you being stealthy or were you being loud? And the louder you are, right, the more chaos you produce. And it actually has negative consequences to that, to the aspect of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Wow, a game that actually punishes you for not employing stealthy measures.
Exactly.
Interesting.
I have to push back on you then. I mean, it's the same series. Metal Gear Solid 5 is part of the Metal Gear series, even though it's more action-oriented. And they progressively became more action-oriented with the exception of 3, which is, I think, more dedicated stealth than anything.
Yeah.
But Metal Gear Solid 5 punished you in regards to your ranking, your heroism, all that, if you decided to go loud. Obviously, if you do certain things, that you can come out at the end of the mission with a decent ranking. But if you get seen too many times, heroism goes down 10 points. It's just a cumulative thing where it's almost like you got to be a legend, like an unseen, almost like it's the canon that no one's ever seen you. No one's seen your face. They just seen what you've done.
Yeah.
Right.
You are the legend. You are pretty much, a ghost, right?
A demon.
A demon. So I would definitely say that a lot of games have definitely kind of pulled away from that rewarding stealth aspect and are kind of now getting into that you can go in loud and proud and then nothing really happens, or you can sneak in, but the stealth mechanics aren't rewarding, or they're just kind of there. So I look at a couple of games, right? One example is Horizon Zero Dawn, right? There are stealth aspects to the game, but it's something as simple as, oh, there's a bush. I just go and crouch into the bush.
I didn't actually play Horizon for as much as we've talked about it.
Right.
What are some of the stealth scenarios? Did you play Horizon?
No, I have absolutely played through Horizon. I mean, it's been a little while since I've last played through Zero Dawn, but played through Zero Dawn and a bit of Forbidden West. But I kind of got what's the word that people use? Bored, but in regards to the stealth aspects, yes, there is an option to go stealthily. You can, focus on trying to move through the bushes. upgrading your skill tree to sort of assist you in doing those more stealthy mechanics. But even doing so, despite all of that, the game doesn't necessarily. So even if you let yourself be seen and spotted, usually the times that it only really matters if there's a specific like mission segment that specifically says, "Hey, you have to emphasize being as quiet as possible and not being seen." Sure, that's cool and all, but that's only like the parameters for that specific mission. Because even games like Ghost of Tsushima, which is known for being quote unquote a stealth game, which, if we're being completely honest, being completely real about it, it's a pseudo stealth game.
Yeah, I would say so. For the limited amount of time I put into the game,
Right.
even though it's one of my favorites.
Right. I would say the same thing with like The Last of Us as well, which is also like surprisingly like, yes, it has stealth elements, and there are segments where the game will punish you heavily if you don't stealth, namely being anytime you're trying to maneuver amongst clickers and such, because clickers, they if you don't know anything about The Last of Us, clickers are these type of zombies that don't see normally. They see based off of sound, like echolocation. So anytime you make any sounds or sudden like noises or whatever, that's what they hone in on you, and they will one shot kill you.
So A Quiet Place.
Yeah, A Quiet Place. Of course, you can get like a certain upgrade that allows you to use your I think your knives to try to defend yourself, but the problem is your knives are really important to you, and you don't want to just willy-nilly use them. So in that sense, I will kind of give like The Last of Us a little bit more props in terms of like emphasizing, hey, you need to use stealth in order to maneuver around these type of levels. But even still, like, it's one of those things where, yeah, it works, but despite it working for those kind of scenarios and such, and yeah, you can approach the game like that, I don't think enough is properly done to really emphasize the whole stealth game aspect. Like, yeah, you have the brick and you can throw it to distract enemies, or you can, like, you know, shoot certain things and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you know, you're still, it's more effective to go guns a-blazing, and that's the issue. Because there needs to be a balance between, like, hey, you can go in guns a-blazing, or you can go in stealth, and both ways are going to reward you heavily. I think probably the closest you would ever get to that is maybe Hitman, where it rewards you so heavily if you decide to go in stealth, or if you decide to go in guns a-blazing, it also rewards you just as heavily.
Yeah.
And it gives you a whole lot of scenarios to go about it too.
Okay, yeah, maybe are the scenarios like, or what is it about these stealth games that you want? Like, what do you want? Because we have those. Because for me, when I'm playing MGS5, that's what I'm on right now. So if I bring it up 25 times, sorry.
Hey, I mean, it's a good game too. So
Yeah, I mean, I say so. But what I'm trying to say is, if you go guns blazing in MGS5, there are certain loadouts you can go in with that will
Right.
kind of give you more ability to do that.
Okay.
But for me, I've never really felt OP in just like open combat in
Right.
MGS, because someone's going to pull out a tank, someone's going to get on a gun and just light you up, and then someone's going to headshot you, and you're going to have to replay the whole mission.
Right.
So it's better to stealth, like, as much as possible. You can create a moment where it's open chaos, but after that, you need to go back and stealth and kind of reapproach the mission if possible.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
What are you guys looking for as the stealth master and as someone who's played plenty of stealth games yourself, Cash?
You know, just a handful here and there.
Just enough. Just enough to be dangerous.
Just a little bit.
What are you guys looking for? Because I know what I like, but what do you guys want?
So I think when it comes to stealth games, the creativity aspect of how you can approach a situation is always key, right?
So like the Hitmans.
Like the Hitmans, right? Like, you have a lot of options and a lot of entry points, right? You want to be able to play a stealth game, and I always imagine it like this, right? I go and I'm like maybe several meters away, miles away, right? And I'm scouting out my area, right? Looking at access points, you know, taking my time with it, you know? I don't want to just have to be like, okay, well, I'm just going to scan a place and then just run in. And
just like hit the ability to scan.
to scan. Like, that is
my
the
goodness,
one
bro.
biggest issue I have with a lot of games nowadays, even stealth or pseudo stealth games, is I just have to scan the entire area, and then I know where everybody is, so then I can just avoid them. Right? I have no problems with like the listening aspect of like, I'm by a wall and I'm trying to hear somebody's footprints, you know, and it kind of gives me that little bit of like indicator like somebody's nearby. But when I can literally just like scan something that's like, you know, several miles away, and I can take the whole aspect and be like, okay, well, I know that there are 20 guys in this building and I know each of their routes, right? I'm like, what's kind of the point, you know?
Sure.
It doesn't feel rewarding enough.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but between the two of you, because I don't know any games that are specifically like that, like, oh, hit the button or use this ability and it scans the whole place. I know MGS5, which, again, MGS5, right? Depending on what you're doing, you might have upgraded your base enough to have some like passive abilities that, oh, when you're approaching an outpost, it'll be like enemies nearby, and it'll kind of give you the general location, but it doesn't tell you everything.
No.
Maybe further in the game it does. I don't.
So, because even like a game that heavily emphasizes stealth, like the Batman Arkham games, they have that feature of that detective sense, or like that third eye sense, where you could see everything in this X-ray vision. You can be able to tag different subjects and such like that. But even despite all those features and stuff, there's also, I think, some missions where you're not able to even tap into those abilities and such. And sometimes you will have to emphasize just going in stealth only, just because of how bad it will get the moment you're spotted. But I guess what he means by that is there's some games that will emphasize being able to tag, targets and such as you see them. And when they're tagged, you could still technically see them through walls. Or even when you use that, that third eye sense where you just like, I don't know, tap on your touchpad, or, you click in your triggers or whatever. You press some kind of button, you basically get access to this vision that allows you to see through walls, even though your character realistically should not be able to do that. Now, I love Ghost of Tsushima. It's a great game. However, it has that issue of I could just tap on my touchpad and boom, I could see through walls. How is Jin seeing through walls? He should not be able to see through walls.
Now,
even if you say like mystical magicalness is happening, it's like, well,
a perfect example is Dishonored, right? In the Dishonored series, right? You have the ability to see through walls, but it's because of your magical abilities, right? So it's like, okay, you go and you press it, right? And it gives you a limited amount of time to do so. And it also takes up your mana meter, right? So it's not like I can just spam this religiously, right? I have to use it when I can, right?
Right.
So I activate it, everything else goes black, and I can see a certain like field view of who is maybe behind a certain wall, or who is around the corner, right? But it's limited.
Yeah.
So it's explained in the game's canon slash story that hey, and it's not OP.
Yeah, if you want to talk about more grounded stuff, take Splinter Cell for example. I believe I'm pretty sure you can get like a snake camera that you can put underneath doors.
That was so cool.
See,
bro.
yeah, and that one is also like it's limited to the sense of like, hey, I have to physically put this down there, and I'm locked in that position. I'm looking around.
Somebody can sneak up on you while you're doing that.
Yeah, someone can sneak up around you while you're doing that. The whole point about, I think, what emphasizes and sort of exemplifies like stealth games and their mechanics is the balance between like sort of like you explained before, like power fantasy, but at the same time, like danger and consequence for your actions. Like, yeah, you can get access to these really powerful abilities, but in the same vein, the risk is so much higher for doing these more powerful things versus if you were to like just lower yourself down and try to go in as light as possible, the risk isn't as high. So it's sort of like it plays that very delicate dance of bouncing between, hey, you get access to the abilities that allow you to see through walls and stuff, but the risk is now you turn off 90% of your vision in order to do this, or you're stuck in a certain position, right? Or I don't know, maybe you get access to suddenly disappear from one location and teleport to another location. But maybe the danger is the moment you do it, everyone knows that you're in the general vicinity immediately.
Yeah. Or maybe they don't tell you where you're going to go.
Or maybe they don't tell where you go. Maybe you teleport somewhere randomly.
Right. Which would be
horrible
consequences.
Yeah, that would be consequences.
And I mean, we've talked about that. Like some of the most impactful moments in games are where you realize there's a consequence for your actions.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So I
1,000%.
love that you brought that up. Dude, I know there's a list of games that we kind of all talked about. Assassin's Creed. Is that still a stealth game?
I'm going to keep it 100 with you. Assassin's Creed was never actually truly a true stealth game.
Really?
Yes, I will say this. I've played from the first game all the ways up until Valhalla, and I've had to like take off the rose-tinted glasses, as we say, and be objective on it. Right? It's like, yes, there is kind of like that like slight stalking feature, right? But for the most part, Altair, it's like you can kind of like disguise yourself, but why were you running in the first place, right?
True.
Why did you have to disguise yourself when you were being chased, And there are some tailing missions there, but for the most part, you're not really sneaking around for the most part, if you kind of actually think about it. Like in the Assassin's Creed 2, or Brotherhood, Revelations, all that stuff, right? there are sneaking parts in the game, but you don't actually like stealth around. Like sometimes you're like, okay, well, don't get caught in this area, and that's a specific mission you got to do. But for the most part, you're not really like sneaking around, you know?
What do you mean by that? Just for the layman and myself, because I'm like, okay, well, technically you're walking around the streets. No one's going to be like, it's him, you know,
yeah.
unless you, I guess if you are, is there like a wanted system? Like,
Assassin's Creed does
where
have
does
a
the
want.
stealth come into play?
So I think the stealth in Assassin's Creed comes into play pretty much whenever you are in the danger, in that immediate danger. How do you like hide yourself from the enemy, from the guards, right?
Okay.
So let's say, for instance, I go up, I stab a guy, you know, he drops on the floor. The guards see me. Hey, what are you doing? You know, and you're like, oh, I gotta run now. So now you're booking it, you're jetting it, right? You're looking around for a place to hide. Maybe there's like a group of monks that kind of look like you, or there's a hay bale that you got to jump into, right? So you go, you run, you jump into the hay bale, wait a few seconds, like Grand Theft Auto's wanted system, right? Eventually, the fuzz cools off, and you're good to go. You know, that's kind of what Assassin's Creed kind of had for the most part.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you'll have missions where you have to like tail somebody, right? But it's pretty much you just like, you know, walking behind. Every once in a while they'll stop, they'll turn around, they'll look at you, right? Maybe you're like in a hay bale or you're on the rooftop or something along those lines. So there are sometimes that stealth element, but for the most part, and if you ever notice for a lot of the Assassin's Creed missions, you're not really doing a lot of sneaking around for the most part. You're actually kind of just like fighting a lot of guys, or you're fighting a few guys.
So it's more of like a action game with stealth elements.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's fascinating because I hate to even agree with you because I'm like, this is Assassin's Creed. You know, this is, you know, the legacy of Assassin's Creed. You sneaking around, you stealthing. But if I remember correctly, you can be seen by pretty much anyone. It's
Yeah.
no big deal unless it's mission specific to like, don't get seen by this person or that person.
Yeah.
Like you're walking around, no one's, it's not like, hey, you know, like as soon as you get seen, like in MGS5, you know, that's what I've been playing.
Right.
You cannot be seen ever. Like if you're riding in a truck, and you know, obviously if you're out of line of sight, right? But if you're driving in a truck where it's like, there's no way they can see through this, they'll see it. And then it's now you're setting off the alert. Now everybody and all the little bases around you know you're coming, and now they're looking for you. And all the guards are walking in kind of like a semi-set alert pattern, which I think we've got to get to a point in games where guards don't have a set pattern.
Like it's randomized.
It's a little bit more randomized.
Metal Gear Solid does do a little bit of randomization, right? And I'll say this for Horizon, which is unfortunately its biggest flaw.
Horizon Zero Dawn.
Right, Horizon Zero Dawn. It's
Yes.
one of their biggest flaws, but they were trying to do something different. It's the fact that Aloy, her I forget what it's called, the piece,
focus?
the focus in her ear, right?
Yeah.
It can predict the trajectory of where somebody's going, like their walk pattern, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't just work for the robots, it also works for people, right?
Yep.
And it's like, I get that you're trying to do something to focus it, but now it makes it so obvious that I can just be like, I'll just wait for this guy to bank around the corner, and then I have a
Right.
few seconds to just run around. You know? So unfortunately, that is the thing, right? Talking about Metal Gear Solid 5, the one great thing they do about it is that they have adaptive stealth in that game. So
I mean the adaptive difficulty.
that too. So let's say, for instance, I'm pretty sure you use the trank pistol like all the time, right?
Now I'm on the Riot SMG, which is a little bit more ammo, a little
bit more ammo,
faster.
a little faster. So one thing you'll notice, right, is that the more you use the trank pistol, right, soldiers will start to wear helmets
Right.
because they don't want to get tranked in the head, right? The more you do a little bit more heavy assault, the more body armor they wear. The more you try to sneak around, they'll start laying traps. So now you have to be more focused, right? A really great stealth mechanic to add to the game that challenges you to say, okay, I really need to watch where I'm going, and I really need to plan out my next attack.
Right. Or even I've noticed some of the guards because I'm starting to realize, hey, I need to stop doing things during the day. I'm trying to sneak more. I'm trying to get caught less.
Yeah.
Let's do the missions at night. I have night vision, so let's go. Now they have night vision.
Exactly. One thing, and Metal Gear Solid is like one of the one of those games that you just kind of keep talking about all the time.
The gift that keeps on giving.
You're rubbing off on me. But, right, if you ever notice, right, you're wearing the black sneaking suit, right, and you wear it during the day, people are going to see you. You have to wear that in the middle of the night. If you want to wear like your desert camo
Yeah.
in the daytime, it works. You actually are seen a lot less. Now, your footsteps are still going to be there, but you're going to be seen a lot less versus, well, you can't hear my footsteps, but
I actually really despise, and let's talk about this in games, footsteps, movement speed. In my MGS, it seems like no matter how slow I go, I can still hear myself crunching away. It's like I'm sitting in like the crunchiest foam pit ever. And I'm just like crunch, crunch, crunch. I'm like, crawl slower. I could do this. Like what are we doing?
and then your equipment's just swinging around.
Yeah, it pisses me off. But in other stealth games, is there kind of like an in-universe explanation for why they're moving so quietly? Is there a certain movement speed that definitely alerts people based on games that you guys have played?
That one's a little bit tricky to determine because, so from my understanding is that if you move at a regular walking speed, typically that's going to alert most enemies because it's loud enough to be heard. But if you're moving at a more like crouched, like slower speed, or you're crawling, that typically is going to reduce your profile enough so it's harder for you to be picked up on. Maybe some games are like, hey, this is absolute. Like if you're crawling or whatever, you're never going to be heard. But one thing for certain is that, as you try to slow down to those slower speeds, it's harder to pick up on those sounds. And it's unfortunate because I think those games, they have a good concept, they have a good idea, but they're not brave enough to commit fully to it. Because that's one thing I will give to the Kojima is that when he wants to commit to an idea, he commits to an idea. And he goes in like full pain, like full throttle all the way. It may be the craziest thing you will ever do or maybe the silliest thing ever, right? Because, okay, if we're being honest, Death Stranding, one of the silliest game concepts ever, if I'm being completely honest with you guys.
Yeah, it's wild.
A walking simulator? Are you kidding me? However, at the same time, it is one of the most in-depth walking games, period. Like, just the sheer amount of, like, geometry and other mechanics they put into designing this game is so cool. Like, the fact that you have to constantly balance your weight and shift it around as you're going up certain terrain, the fact that each and every bump, if you're traveling on like a road vehicle, so to speak, it causes the vehicle to shift and turn in a certain way. Like there's just so much thought and like, forethought put
There's
into
a lot of intentionality.
a lot of intention. There's a lot of intention versus just like, oh, I guess we could do this. I mean, and don't get me wrong, that probably would be quote unquote easier on the gamers or quote unquote maybe potentially more fun. But at the same time, I do have to applaud him for at least pushing the envelope because it really pushes people to think about, oh, how much can we incorporate into a game and how much should we incorporate?
Right.
Because when you do that, then you can finally begin to fully understand and begin to calibrate from there on out. Because in my opinion, I talked about the Red Dead before and I ragged on them for the whole collecting of the pelts thing, right?
Yeah.
Now we know collecting pelts probably should be sped up after the first few times, or at least give an option where it's like, hey, do you want to collect your pelts faster? Oh, or even this, if you want to be goofy about it, put it as a skill tree option. There you go.
That's hilarious. I just want to take like 30 seconds to just congratulate Kojima for like pushing the technology that was available to him. I was just listening to some like history of how he developed some of the MGS games, and the reason why some of them were never completed the way he wanted it to is because he was limited by the tech of the time. He wasn't just working within the sandbox. He went so far as I believe 4 had to come out on, or maybe it was 2 or 4 had to come out on 2 different discs because he maxed out a disc.
Yeah.
And that's incredible because I'm like, whoa. He got to, some games did that, right? I think maybe GTA did that on the 360.
I know Final Fantasy VII did that.
Yeah.
Which it makes sense.
Right.
So it's like we're really pushing the technology beyond what it's capable of and finding the limitations, not just saying, oh, this is what we have. Let's just play within the box. And, I'm not even going to optimize Call of Duty and have a game that's 150 gigabytes or 200. Is it 200 yet?
No.
Well, okay, if you have Warzone installed, yes, it's 200 plus.
Stupid.
250 gigs.
Yeah, because for me, what makes sense if we're talking about like massive games, say for instance, I know like Black Myth Wukong is like 130 or something gigs. Like it's pretty massive. Yeah, no, it's massive.
big. Yeah,
And I think largely it's because of all the high resolution textures that they incorporate into that game. That being said, they
It's a good game though.
Yeah,
so
it's
I'll
a good
do it.
game. Yeah, so they probably should do a little bit better to optimize it. I could be wrong about the exact file sizes, but I know it is pretty massive, like the basic requirements. A game that absolutely makes sense would be the Master Chief Collection because you're It's a collection of many games. Like, what do you expect, man?
Is it more than 3 games?
It's way more than 3. So okay, you have Halo Combat Evolved / the Anniversary Edition because you can switch between
That's right.
either texture at any given time. Same with
Somebody actually just commented that on one of the YouTube shorts that we put
Really?
out, and they were like, "Yeah, my favorite thing about Combat Evolved Remaster Anniversary, whatever, was you could switch in between as you were playing the game,
So you can
really
see as
showing
it's
love
intended,
and
right.
homage to the previous game
Right.
while showing off what they're doing now."
That's
yeah,
so
no,
amazing.
absolutely. Like I think more games should do that if they're taking the more remaster approach, where it's like, it's not just a how do I say this? It's not a complete overhaul in the sense of like Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, and on, but maybe it's done so enough to the point where it's like maybe akin to maybe Dead Space, because Dead Space is like still unique enough in its own vein, but it could also potentially, if you really wanted to, you could revert it to its original graphics and it would look pretty similar.
Yeah. Well, I did want to make sure that we wrapped out this show the right way. I know there's a few more games that you guys had on the list, but a lot of them that I was looking at, I'm like, is that even a stealth game like Cyberpunk 2077?
So
How is that a stealth game?
that is a good point. So what I mean by specifically how is that a stealth game is that it's not entirely a stealth game. It's not really designed to be a stealth game. However, it has what we talked about, stealth mechanics. It has that pseudo stealthness where you can build your character essentially be more of a stealthy kind of approach character.
So gameplay choice,
Yes.
you can become the stealth glass cannon thing.
Yeah, you absolutely could.
I would say even Skyrim goes into that category where you can choose to be a stealth person, but the game itself does not say that you are solely stealth, right? So
I guess the question that you proposed at the beginning is, where are the true stealth titles where you play combat and the game's going to wreck you? Like, do not play combat, play stealth.
yeah, and so
What games still do that?
and that is the question. What games are still doing that in 2024, right? It's like I've tried to look as best as I could to like figure out like what are some stealth titles that are really kind of along those lines of being like, okay, you know, we're still kind of into that role. You don't really barely see anything at all whatsoever.
Are there any like 2D side scroller / indie titles? Stop. I swear I'm not making fun of you.
Oh my gosh.
You're the indie guy.
In the indie world, are you seeing any like true stealth games that are floating to the top? Because there's like a billion indie games, right?
As of recent, no.
Any older ones?
Older ones, yeah. There's
Mark of a Ninja.
Mark of a Ninja, there's Otagami, there is, I'm trying to think of some others. But basically, those games, they really try to push the gimmick of like, hey, stealth is our thing, and here's how we handle our stealth. And I think that's one really cool thing with specifically when it comes to indie game titles is that you have the freedom and the choice to really chase after certain types of mechanics that you want to. And I know sometimes people have complained about indie games feeling more gimmicky compared to like AAA titles, but in their defense, it's usually a sole developer or a few developers who are trying to pursue a certain type of vision. And if anything, it just allows them to be able to experiment with something and later on, hopefully move on to even bigger plans and bigger ideals. Now, if they can manage to pull off a game that really hones in on not just the gameplay, not just feeling like a gimmick, but an actual part of like, hey, this is a really cool mechanic that I want to see in other titles, then that's awesome. That's great, right? But you know, sometimes they fall into that trap of just like feeling like, oh, this is just a 20-hour game that's not really going to it's not really going to leave much of a, I guess, mark in its wake, so to speak. But in terms of like recent stealth titles, I can't. It's really hard to think about it because that's the issue. Is like stealth games have been, ironic enough, stealth games have been hidden away from the mass audience. Like, you know, it's an afterthought for most people.
All right, because you know, shoot 'em ups are like the thing.
Yeah, people like going in guns a-blazing. People like smacking things around. People like that power fantasy. You know, just go in there, you make yourself known, and you leave. But there's not enough people saying like, hey, what if they never knew I was there? I went in there, I messed them up. They don't know what hit them, and I left. They never knew I was there.
That I think would be really cool. Now, I guess last question, then we'll let you do the sign out. No, I already said last question. One more question. One more. When I used to work in a call center, there were these guys who would call and they'd be like, one more question. I just have one more question. 20 minutes later.
Yeah,
all right, last question.
Unskippable cutscene at that point.
Dude, my whole life, if you can avoid working in a call center, you should do it once in your life. Work in a call center once. You will gain so much respect for people who do it and patience. That said, first person versus third person stealth games.
Ooh, that is a interesting topic. it depends on what you're doing. So the third person and the first person, right? Ooh, because there are definitely I've definitely had a thought about this. So when we come to first person games, right? There is definitely that first person stealth mechanics, like we had Dishonored, and even I would even say like Deus Ex, right?
Deus Ex
You know,
probably fall into it as
would
well.
also kind of fall in kind of into that area. I would say they're a lot more difficult to play, right? Because you're only seeing what's in front of you, right? There are no like camera angles where I can look behind myself, while I'm still facing forward. It's just first person, right? I would say those are definitely the more challenging stealth games,
But more realistic.
but more and also more realistic, right? Because I can't see, I don't have eyes in the back of my head, right? Like I can't see what's going on. If I turn around, I can't see what's in front of me, right?
Or when you're behind a table or cover or something like that, you cannot actually see 10 feet in front of you to know that this guy's turned around and gone somewhere else.
Yeah, you
Right.
can.
Right.
So I would definitely say that those are definitely more challenging titles, and those can actually be very rewarding. The only downside about those things is that you are limited. And when I say limited, I mean the fact that you're gonna have a lot less access to a lot of abilities that you would have in a third person game, where my HUD, I guess I shouldn't say my HUD, because like some games they have that HUD where it gets really cluttered,
Right.
right? And then and for a third person, it kind of is a little bit more easier to access
Right, because it's not really clouding up your
your entire screen,
vision, right?
Right, versus a first person where my entire screen is going to be cluttered if I have a bunch of stuff on my HUD, right?
Right.
So those are kind of like some of the ups and downs. I would say that a third person stealth game is definitely a lot easier to like, play. You're gonna have a lot more of a bigger vision. If I play Metal Gear Solid versus Dishonored, right, or if I play Thief, right, like I can only see what's in front of me, and sometimes depending on the lighting situation, it's gonna be really hard to see anything, right?
I've not heard a lot about Thief. Was that actually a good game or no?
I would say that the first game was pretty solid. I haven't heard much like great things about the second game. It's kind of a toss up,
It's a mixed bag.
mixed bag. And I could be wrong, right? Things could have changed, but last time I had checked, which they were like, yeah, Thief 2 was kind of
It's more of the same or less?
a little bit more of the same.
Okay.
So I would say that like the Thief games are really good. It actually tries to pull away from combat, like very much like do not go anywhere near a guard, right? You can sometimes knock guards out, but don't make it a habit, right? Because you're a thief. You're not an assassin. You're not a hitman. You're a thief. You're here to steal things, not kill things.
Right. Which, when we talk about the world of consequences, realism, in real life, most people who are in that occupation are not trying to get into any problems. In fact, they're trying to charisma
absolutely.
their way out of situations.
Oh yeah. So that is one of those titles that you want to be a ghost, right?
So, would you say that's the best modern stealth game?
Modern stealth game, a thief.
The first Thief, game?
first
Or was
Thief?
was there a different one that you guys liked?
Oh boy. I would say that Thief was a pretty good stealth game. I wouldn't say that it's modern because it's one of those like old games.
Is it older?
Yeah, it's
It's one
definitely
of the older titles. So I would definitely say that it was a pretty solid stealth game. I think that like if they were to kind of take chapters and pages out of Thief and put it into a modern console, I think it'd be really great as a stealth game.
All right, cool. Well, best pseudo stealth game that you guys have played. Mine is MGS5. But what are you guys on?
Let's see. If I'm being real, like honest about it, I don't know. I absolutely love the Batman Arkham games. Like I'm sorry, but that is like my love child right there. Because for me, what made it so special is that one, this is the Dark Knight. Like you're a detective, but on top of it, they emphasize not just the combat itself, but like being able to just really instill that fear into your enemies, so to speak. Because 1 second, a guard could be walking around, and the next thing you know, he hears like a sound. He walks off in a different direction. His buddy gets snatched. The other guy comes back and says, "Hey, where'd he go?" And then he gets snatched, and then someone freaks out, and they start shooting up in the air, and you can see their heart rate is like they're panicking and stuff, and they're like, "Don't mess with me, man. I'll mess you up."
I mean, it's a true Batman game.
Yeah, that is a true
right?
Batman game.
You are the Batman.
Yeah.
You're gonna break that guy's jaw and tell him now talk.
Now talk. So yeah, I absolutely love the Batman games for being like, I guess, a 100% like a true like either pseudo or even full stealth if you want to view it that way, right? Games I really wish would embrace being more of a stealth game. I really hope that Ghost of Yote, or Yotai, however you want to pronounce it, or I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. I hope that it, like, yes, there are guns. I think that's great. But it'll be really cool, if you kind of delve more into the stealth mechanics. Because I like what you guys have in the first game, but I want to see more. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
I would say, especially since you are playing as a female protagonist,
Yes.
who most people are going to say, well, shouldn't she be at a strength disadvantage going against some of the just absolute brutes that you would have to fight in the first game? You should probably lean a little bit more into the stealth mechanics to give her a fighting chance, especially considering your companion in the first game was more of that thief assassin.
Oh yeah. I mean, because you had Jin. He was starting off as a super noble samurai. His whole thing's like, "Come out and face me," right? And,
He was a born fighter.
Yeah, he was a born fighter. Come out and face me, right? But then he started learning from this girl, Yuna, one of your companions, and she was like, "Hey, dude, sometimes you got to go in there and you got to, sneak around, do what you got to do, assassinate people." He's like, "Oh no, that's super dishonorable. Why would I do that?" But then he realized, "Oh, wait a minute. The Mongols, they don't really understand the language of the samurai. In fact, they're not only they understand the language of the samurai, and because they understand it so well, they're abusing it. So it's time for me to speak a language that they also sort of understand, but something that is foreign to them. In
Violence.
like violence. Yeah, violence is something they understand, but it's scarier when you have a language that, hey, I don't know what hit me. Like something just happened. The guy over there, he started, freaking out, and he started attacking everyone. What is going on? The guy over there, he's investigating some kind of weird bell sound. Next thing you know, he started coughing up blood. The guy over there, I heard some firecrackers going off. Like, what is that sound? And next thing you know, there's a huge explosion, and 3 or 4 guys are on fire, and they're rolling around and screaming in terror. Some other guy over there, he got hit by something, and now he is coughing up blood as well. So, I really like those mechanics that they have in place, and I hope that Sucker Punch just can continue to deliver on those type of mechanics and even evolve past that. Especially with the NPCs, like make them a lot smarter.
Gotta have smarter AI. Gotta have smarter.
Yeah,
NPCs.
smart AI is super important.
Have to. Wow. I mean, honestly, you pretty much like knocked it out of the park with that back on Batman Arkham and Ghost of Tsushima. Like, I honestly like those games, like the pseudo stealth, having it optional, like those are pretty much at its top peak when it comes to that pseudo stealth. Like I can't, I probably could, but at the same time, it's just like those are kind of in that area, where it's just like I want to feel like that ninja, but also if I'm gonna be going out swinging swords and kind of pretending to be.
I do got one question to ask you. So, how do you feel about games that incorporate the stealth mechanics, but they just feel like an afterthought? Do you think they should just abandon it altogether or delve further into it? Like, for instance, let's call them out. Like Insomniac, they make very good Spider-Man games. However,
So, if we're talking about games that like the Spider-Man games, it's one of those things where it's just like, I'll even say for Spider-Man, right? You don't have to add the stealth mechanics at all, and it would still be a solid game.
Yeah,
like 100%. Right?
Okay.
You wouldn't have to, right? If it's there, it's there. Except the Mary Jane missions, or at least the first Mary Jane mission.
The first one was terrible.
The first ones were terrible. The Mary Janes and Miles Morales missions in the first game, terrible stealth segment. If you had taken that out of the game, it would have been fine.
Are you saying you're playing as Mary Jane?
He played as Mary Jane and as
dumb.
Miles
Why are
Morales
we doing
before
that?
he got
his powers.
Yeah, we don't need to do that.
You don't need to do it, right? Like you could have taken that out entirely, right? The newer Mary Jane's missions for the second game, they were fun. You had your little pistol thing, but overall, like, it definitely had a lot more of a combat aspect to it. But if you had taken that out of the game, or if you didn't add it, I wouldn't have been upset.
Right.
I would have been like, this is just missing something. I wouldn't even notice, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So like if you're not really known for those kind of stealth mechanics, you don't have to have them. Actually, that is one of the things that like the Spider-Man and some of the games tend to kind of like, I kind of roll my eyes with whenever there's a stealth aspect. So there'll be those moments where you're in a warehouse, you have to take out a certain amount of people, right? Like the first time you're there, let's say for instance you take out all the guys, right? And then like, hey, the spider's here, and then a bunch of like new wave of enemies show up, and I'm like, why did I even bother to sneak around if this is gonna happen anyways?
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
I might
that
as well
should be a consequence of failing the stealth.
Yeah. If the guys all popped out because, they saw me one too many times, taking their guys out, then obviously they should say, hey, the spider's here, bring it in backup. But if they don't notice anything and they're the last guy standing, it's like, well, what's going on? At that point, why have him call him back up? There's no point in doing that.
There's no point. So I'm kind of in that era when it comes to certain games like those where it's just like, listen, man, if you don't really want to invest in stealth, just don't bother. Like it's fine. Like I don't mind every now and then like a sneak attack. That's cool. But like if you really kind of like gonna add these stealth aspects, it's kind of like what is the point? You know, kind of just don't add it. Don't bother. Don't waste your time with it. You know?
Right. Because at least one issue for me, specifically with Miles Morales, is that when he gains his abilities and his powers, he has two things about him: his Venom abilities, which are not to be confused with a symbiote, but electricity-based abilities, and one of them allows him to pretty much turn himself invisible, like he cloaks himself, which is really cool. Except you realize how painfully easy it is to handle stealth stealth segments, and that for me is like such a like gripe because I'm like, man, like at least. You know, I kind of want there to be a challenge. I need the enemies to be a little bit smarter, but at the same time, it's like if I can just turn invisible for free, and there's not, there is the meter for how long your invisibility lasts and all that. Sure, that's good, but to me, it felt way too easy and just too much of a, we kind of have to put stealth in here. Why not we just throw it in there and make players feel cool? I mean, yeah, sure, the first time it's fine, but after a while, it just kind of feels like, why am I doing this?
I actually found that when I was playing the Miles Morales games, I barely used my invisibility at all.
See?
Like
there's no need to.
I almost kind of forgot that it was like there was the one segment where it's like you have to use it,
right? And
it's like, oh yeah, it's there. And then for the majority of the game, I almost forgot I had that power because I just didn't have a need for it.
Yeah, there's no need to. You absolutely don't need it because I mean, look at Peter Parker for example. Him as Spider-Man, he stealths on his own, like just perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. He doesn't really need to use invisibility. In fact, that was the first game they did without invisibility.
Yeah.
So
he didn't have invisibility. I would love for there to be like a specific Spider-Man stealth game because I will say this: Spider-Man could make an excellent ninja. Like he could. He could, right? Even though he wears like red and blue, like he can make an excellent ninja. But I would love there to be like a Spider-Man variant where it doesn't even have to be in New York City, or it could be where he's just strictly sneaking around. Like you don't even know. It's called like I know like technically Gwen Stacy's supposed to be the Ghost Spider,
right?
But like just
honestly, they could do it with her.
Yeah, they could have Gwen Stacy just make her the Ghost Spider or an Agent Spider or something along those lines, where you're just like a Spider-Man, a variant of Spider-Man, just sneaking around, right? And nobody knows he exists, right? It'd be cool. That just me personally.
Could be good. I mean, I don't know.
He's like, I don't know.
But yeah, I assume your favorite pseudo stealth game right now or stealth game would be MGS5.
Oh yeah, I mean, truthfully, is kind of where I'm at. But if we talk about like classic games, it would be the old Splinter Cell, even Splinter Cell Blacklist, which I hope they continue the series and don't make it too modern.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, that reminds me.
When we modernize games, sometimes it gets the wrong attention.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, speaking of Splinter Cell, it's a shame that who owns it because they haven't done anything. Yeah, Ubi owns it.
They've been sleeping on their own titles. I mean,
part of me is like a little bit thankful that they're not doing anything with it because that means you don't have the opportunity to mess it up, right? Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, you see what happens when a company doesn't use their IPs. Cough, cough, Sony. Cough, cough, Konami for a long time until recent.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad that Konami is finally getting back into their bag and doing stuff. Hopefully, they continue to deliver. Did they deliver on that Silent Hill 2 at all?
Yes, I actually think it was supposed to be releasing this month.
This month? Okay.
I think don't quote me on it, but I think it was this month.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to have to check that out.
All right. Well, I think we're at the end. You want to sign us out?
Yeah. So with that being said, you guys probably have opinions, options, all that stuff. Leave them down in the comments. Make sure to like, share, subscribe. You know the works. I'm Marksman Crusader. Drink lots of water. Stay hydrated.
It's your boy Atlas. Thank you so much for watching, listening, wherever you are. Podcast, we're out there, Apple Podcast, Spotify. And if there's a podcast platform that you're using that we're not on, let me know, please. Thank you.
All right, peace. I'm your boy Cash.
All right. See ya.